Chapter 3 of The Artist's Way is recovering a sense of power. Anger is supposed to be fuel. We're not meant to ignore or stuff down our anger. But one of the ways society brainwashes us is by telling us anger is bad. All my life, I've been very angry. But I had been surrounded by people who didn't take my anger very seriously. One of the biggest pieces of advice Julia Cameron uses in this chapter is people should listen to their anger. I lost a lot of years of my life not listening to my anger. But anger will always tell us when it's time to act in our own best interests. As I've mentioned, after a lifetime of being groomed into accepting people in my life who did not have my best interests at heart, I was not in the habit of caring about or considering my emotions. I was deeply out of touch with what I needed. What I didn't understand was how my anger was telling me how badly my old life needed to die. At this point, Julia Cameron changes direction to talk about synchronicity and the concept of God. I've mentioned before that I've been an atheist since I was about 14 because I grew up in a young earth creationist Baptist school that blamed little girls for their own sexual assault and also said slavery was good for black people. So, as you can imagine, I didn't believe in a God whose followers could be so cruel. But my studies in graduate school, along with this book, made me reconsider my ability to believe in a higher power. Julia Cameron was very emphatic about placing your faith in a higher power when you come to develop yourself creatively. So, because I didn't believe in God or like the God that I had been exposed to growing up, I decided to invent my own concept of God based on qualities that I admired. I thought about what I hated about the Old Testament Christian God. He was selfish, narcissistic, prone to favoritism, committed genocide, demanded blind loyalty, expected blind obedience to authority, and was impulsive, mercurial, etc., etc. Anyway, I decided to create a God with all the qualities I admired. She was compassionate, nurturing, gentle, creative, musical, loving, wise. I sort of melded this God concept with a reverence and awe for nature, because psychological research at the time told me that the psychological benefits of religion were bestowed through such feelings as reverence and awe. And I remembered the first time I really felt that was when I set foot in a redwood forest. Anyway, not long after I created this God concept for myself, I stumbled upon a Kuan Yin oracle deck. This was a pretty big synchronicity because she embodied all of the qualities I envisioned in a god. And she played the flute and danced just like me. Kuan Yin is a Buddhist god, but it's very much emphasized in Hinduism that gods are created to be relatable to humans so that we can create a personal relationship with them. So if current representations in religion aren't working for you, you could invent a concept that works for you. Anyway, this happened like 9 years ago. I had a lot to work through. I still didn't really believe in God, but Julia Cameron is very emphatic that God is important because when you let go of control and allow yourself to focus on what you really love, God will support you. Julia Cameron urges readers to fuck around and find out, basically. The more you focus on your creative endeavors, the more she argues that God or the universe or whatever higher power you believe in is going to support you. What stops people from fucking around and finding out? Shame. Being cringe. My favorite quote from this chapter is, "When people do not want to see something, they get mad at the person that shows them." What Julia Cameron is talking about is how in art you're supposed to share a secret. This can bring up all sorts of feelings of shame in you or other people. People use shame to try to keep us from artistically expressing our secrets, our sides of the story that confront a dominant narrative or don't put others in such a positive light. And I started to notice when I started to make my first bad, mediocre creations and sought mentorship, no one wanted to give me any mentorship. I just got a lot of cringe reaction. And I found it really strange. Was I really that bad, or was it just this embarrassing to be writing bad songs at 25? I've had bad reviews in my life, but I kept being told that if I worked hard and persisted, I'd receive support. But it just wasn't materializing yet. So I just kept doing it anyway. As a person who has always managed my own emotions by being a high achiever, this was really challenging for me. I was bad at something, and bad enough to not receive validation sucked. But being bad enough that I couldn't even get constructive criticism was so much worse. I didn't have skills, and I didn't even know which skill deficits to focus on. I felt so helpless, and that was when I found the answer. I was watching an interview at 2 a.m. for one of my favorite musicians, and she talked about how she played the 20-song game, an exercise in which you work for 12 hours, writing and recording songs, and it's supposed to make your brain enter a state of flow. I knew the only way to get better at writing songs was to write more songs, so I got a copy of the book, gathered my friends, and started organizing songwriting days. I focused on writing simple songs, and not criticizing or shaming myself for anything I wrote. I still didn't receive much constructive criticism, but the exercise of writing a lot more gave me more information about my capabilities and my limitations. I definitely felt a ton of shame in moments I shared bad, half-baked ideas, but I also thought they were funny. Just showing up for myself in this way, figuring out what I needed to be more creative, helped my friends too. And after only a few sessions, we had enough material to make our second album. At the point when I discovered this game, I let go of a lot of anger because I helped myself figure out how to solve my own problems. It wasn't ideal. I wish I had had better mentorship, but it was something. Musically, this album wasn't what I wanted, but authentically, in content and lyricism, it was a clear step forward. We started playing shows again. We received a free live recording session from one of the studios in town. Finally, we fucked around and we found support. Julia Cameron says that creativity is the only cure for criticism. And I'm gonna add that creativity is the only cure for cringe too. If you want to join me on this journey through The Artist's Way, be sure to pick up a copy of The Artist's Way on bookshop.org. Affiliate link is in the description below.